Welcome to part 2 of my C4 drag race transmission build. What we're going to cover in this video is rollarizing the transmission, removing the thrust washers and replacing them with roller bearings. We're going to start in the back of the transmission and work our way forward. We're going to start with the part gear. I have a roller bearing here. I'll put the part numbers of all the bearings that I use up on the screen as we're going through. And the original thrust washer that was in it. So all I did was take the difference between these two thicknesses, and that's how far I'm going to mill in a pocket into the back of my part gear here. I'm going to mount it in my mill here on a little rotary table and mill the pocket down to that. I'm actually milling this one down to 102 depth into it. So I'm not going to show you me actually milling anything, so I'm just going over what I'm doing. So I'm off to the mill now. So I'm back from the mill. I have a pocket milled in the back of my part gear. My bearing fits in it nice and snug. It'll be sitting like this, then the rest of it will all get assembled. I'll show you a close-up here in a second of the pocket of this gear. And that's it for the number 10. Here is the close-up of the part gear. I'll tilt it around for you so you can see the pocket a little bit better. And that is it for this number 10 roller thrust bearing. We already covered the number 9 thrust washer in the first video, but I just wanted to talk about it just a little bit more. So the bearings that I got, I gave the part numbers for them. They cost me $11.18 off of Amazon, I think. And the one-way clutch hub that needs to be shortened, it cost me $50 to have a local machine shop here put it on their surface grinder and take off the amount that needed to be take off, which was like 45 thousandths of an inch. And so I'm up to like $62 on it, and I still had to make my ring that goes in here, makes up the difference on the inside of this roller bearing and the washer. So Jay at Broder Performance makes this kit for $75. So it's, unless you have access to some machinery that you can do it yourself, you're way off better getting it from Broder Performance for 75 bucks. Okay, we're off to the number 8 thrust bearing in the transmission. It goes in the low reverse drum here. I do the same as like what I did in number 10, measure the stock thrust washer and measure the new bearing, and the difference between them is how far I mill my pocket in the drum. This bearing is very common bearings out of a Turbo 350. It will be used also in the number 7 and number 6 positions coming up in the transmission. While I was at it, I pushed in a new bushing that the one-way clutch rides in on the back side of this. I just made a special tool that goes onto. I just set the bearing on there, push it down in the press, and it's set to the right height that I want the bearing at. So I'm off to the mill now. Here's what the low reverse drum looks like with the pocket milled into it. The one sitting next to it is, I found one that I had laying around, is what it looked like before I started. This is number 7 thrust washer. It goes in the reverse ring gear. This ring gear has a snap ring on it. Just popped it off, removed the ring gear, chucked this up in the mill, and then cut the pocket for it. Everything the exact same as the last pocket, same depth and everything, same Turbo 350 part number as the last one. So this one is all done. So I just got to pop everything back together here and good to go. Okay, we're off to the number 6 thrust washer now, and it's going to go in the reverse rear planetary carrier here. And one thing about this is we'll be cutting through some pins with it assembled. So you're going to need a carbide bit in your mill to do this, to cut through the pins. same Turbo 350 washer as the last two. This will sit like this, and so we're off to the mill now. Okay, here's the number 6 thrust washer and the rear planetary carrier that I just machined, and I'll give you a tilt of it here to see how I went through the pins. So I just went slow on the rotary table when I got to the pins, and so there's number 6 all done. Okay, we are on to number 5 thrust washer, number 4 thrust washer, and one in the carrier bearing of a stock planetary set. Number 5 is just a thin washer that sandwiches in between the 2 snap rings that hold in the sun gear, and number 6 actually rides on it, so we don't do anything there. Number 4 here is another Turbo 350. That is just machined inside the ring gear hub again, same as before, just I put it on the mill, do the depth, the difference between this one and the stock thrust washer, and mill it down that depth. There's another thrust washer that is in a stock planetary here, that is actually a roller bearing already, and it's already there stock, and this is what it looks like. It's just a cage set, and just sits in there. It can't come out of this stock carrier unless you take the gears out. All right, we're on to the number 3 thrust washer. This is what a stock one looks like, kind of like the other ones. This is what we're going to be putting in it. There's two washers on each side of a Torrington bearing, which is going to go in it. To do this, though, you have to weld up what's called the jelly bean holes in the forward clutch drum. There's 3 holes here. I will show you a close-up this also with the other one that's welded up. So I take a MIG welder and MIG weld up these holes, and there is a hole inside of one of these holes, which is a lube hole. So after you're done welding it up, you have to drill that out to get lube to it. So once it's all welded up, I put it in the mill, do the exact kind of same things. I kind of face off the top side where the weld's at, and then I go around the outside of it, which is the outside of the drum, which is the same diameter, which would be the inside diameter of this is what we cut it to. So it will fit right over. You'll see a step when I show a close-up here. So on the left is a stock forward drum, and on the right is one that's been welded up, machined, and had the lube hole drilled out, and this is the lube hole here. I just notched away a little bit to get to the lube hole on the mill while I was on it. One thing about the height of this, so we want our height to be the same with a stock washer here as the height of this. So we're gonna just basically go off the top side of this and how thick the stock washer is, and that's the height we want this one to be, and that's how you get your depth of machine how far down you machine your step. Okay, we're on to the number 2 and the number 1 thrust washer. Both of these thrust washers are selective, so there's different thicknesses of them. This one's the number 2 on top here. The number 1's here on the pump. We'll start with the number 2. Number 2 is the selective thrust washer that controls your end play, which you will be checking at your final assembly. And so when this is together, here's how it fits in. So these two, this is the high reverse clutch drum, and here's the forward clutch drum. So when they're assembled in the transmission, they're going to be like this. This pump half is going to go right through there. To illustrate it a little bit better, I'll show you here. So this thrust washer is going to ride on here when it's together like this, and that's the one that sets your end play. So like I said, there's selective thrust washers for this for different sizes, and that's number 2 there. Number 1 thrust washer, what it does is it controls how much this high reverse drum moves back and forth between the forward clutch drum and pump here. So all it's doing is taking up slack here and not letting it move very much. So you, when you assemble it, you're going to want to check some stuff and get your end play just right. And I haven't seen anybody do a number 2 rollerized. I have heard of people doing the number 1 rollerized. So that's possible. I've never done it because if you look at these thrust washers, there's like no wear on them. So I've never done one there. So I don't think you pick up a lot there on friction. And that's the number 2 and the number 1 thrust washer.